welcome back. Joining me is Rich, Steve, and Ross, and also Tan Teng-bu, CEO of Capital Dynamics. Teng-bu, we continue to hear March being live, and that we should be able to talk about a rate hike then.
Right.
But right now, Fed funds futures just pricing it about, 20% of a chance of an actual rate hike happening. How much higher does that probability have to be for the markets not to be shocked if the Fed really, really wants to start tightening then?
100%.
No, come on.
Well, I think it's because of the most recent job data, because wages just rose 2.4%, down from 2.9% in the previous job report. So by March, you have another job report. And if the next job report, the job report was strong. Employment, new jobs were very strong. And the reason why the unemployment rate went up by 0.1 was because labor participation rate went up slightly. I don't think labor participation rate is going to go up a lot. It's going to be probably sideways. So unemployment rate is probably going to be hovering around this 4.6, 4.7, 4.8. So that brings you back to wages. Now, I think the latest hourly earnings was a surprise to me, surprising on the weak side.
Yeah.
Right? It should be, if you look at other wage indicators, the Federal Reserve has got a sticky wage indicator which shows wages of the same jobs over a 12-month period. That has been rising to 3.5%. So I think that to answer your question, it will really depend on the next job report, which will be due in March, early March.
But still 3 rate hikes, you say, this year?
Yes. I hope so, because, you know, the one thing I was expecting Trump to win, although I don't agree what he says on many areas. The one thing that I agree with him is that he was criticizing the Fed for being too slow. And if you look at the U.S. personal saving, it's about 700 to 800 billion US dollars, and it has jumped up from about 300 to 400 billion before the crisis. Now, what happens to the savers? When I was saving 300 to 400 billion before the crisis, I was earning more interest income. Now I'm saving more than double what it was. I'm not getting any interest income. And what has happened? The NY, the stock market has gone to record highs.
Yeah.
But guess what? The number of US individuals owning shares directly or indirectly through mutual funds have been dropping for years and years.
Yeah.
So this rally has enriched the 1% and not the rest. But these savers are not getting interest income.
Yeah.
So in this particular area, I would have to agree with...
So it's a negative interest rate, effectively.
Yes, on a real basis.
Yeah, exactly.
On a real basis, it's negative. It's been negative for 9 years.
Yeah.
Now, if you continue negative interest rate for such a long period, you're going to threaten financial stability. And look, the Federal Reserve policy has been that I'm going to create the wealth effect so that I can improve consumer spending. But that hasn't really worked.
Yeah, I mean, if trickle-down worked, Zimbabwe would be one of the richest countries in the world, wouldn't it? I mean, come on, let's face it. This is an old thing. It's the Einstein adage of you do the same thing 100 times and you're hoping for a different result. It's the definition of insanity.
Yes. So coming back to my point about 3 rate hikes, I hope it happens. The U.S. monetary policy has to normalize.
Yeah.
Well, what's your view on emerging markets in Asia? I mean, given the U.S. markets.
Probably dollar strength or dollar weakness as well.
I see U.S. dollar having peak. I take a different stance in the sense that by next year you probably see U.S. dollar weaker than what it is. I mean, across the board, right? And I think that is partly because the currency markets would have, that is on my presumption that the Federal Reserve would increase 2 to 3 times.
Yeah.
And the currency markets, the financial markets will be looking forward and say, hey, maybe guys, it's time for the US to have a sharp slowdown, or if you are unlucky enough, a recession. Right? So for the emerging markets, I think the weakness in emerging market currencies, including the not so well-loved Malaysian ringgit, would probably be able to stabilize or even strengthen.
So you're saying you might see a US recession later this year?
I love history. I love history.
Yeah, but that's not going to really mean rate hikes, is it?
That would be because of the rate hikes that I'm anticipating.
Okay.
It sounds more to me not that you're anticipating, but that you're hoping for, given the trajectory of the markets.
What's the difference between hoping and anticipation?
Well, you want them, but every time we say that in the beginning of the year, they end up not happening, or as many as we expect.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the inaccuracy of the Fed's forecast, not mine. But coming back to history,
Alt facts, okay.
in the 1920s, you have an 8-year economic boom, right? The Roaring 20s. You have an 8+ year rally in the New York market. Guess what? Herbert Hoover was the president in early 1929, and Herbert Hoover was a Republican.
Yeah.
And you know what his policies were? He gave an executive order in September 1930 to ban immigrants. And in 1930, you have the Smoot-Hawley Act, which is more protectionist than you can ever think of. So if you, I don't like similarities because that's not cause and effect relationship, but it gets too eerie.
Yeah.
But I guess history does tend to repeat itself.
Led to the Great Depression, so are we heading to another?
No, we are not. But all I'm saying is that I think if you look at the level of policy uncertainties, if you look at the VIX index, there's a huge divergence between the two. Either the policy uncertainties come down, or the VIX index goes up. I'm guessing that the VIX index is going to go up.
Tengbu, thank you so much for joining us today. Tengbu Tan Tengbu, I always get that wrong, from Capital Dynamics Asset Management.